Which midsole foams work best for you? Hey cats, EDDBUD here. Today I'm taking a closer look at a midsole foam. Namely, which ones work best for me. Midsole is the heart of the running shoe, isn't it? The density, the cushion, and the lowering of that energy loss. It's kind of make or break for a running shoe. Today I'm looking at what works best for little old me, sort of tall and lanky me I suppose, in terms of training and racing. Not only for speed and performance sort of perspective, but also for those everyday miles. Checking out the foams that work best to get me to that start line in the best possible condition. I'm going to be diving into the midsole madness from Nike, Saucony, Adidas and Puma today. Don't worry if your favourite brand isn't there, I will be doing a part 2. It will just be a very long video otherwise. Let's grade those foams, part 1. Midsole foams come in all shapes and sizes, don't they? Lots of different densities. Some are more durable, some are more controlled, others super cushioned, squashy and forgiving. Though those tend to be the ones that have very limited durability. Going to start off the video today with Puma. Now, it's become very apparent as I've tested all these different brands that not all the foam names remain the same, and certainly that is true with Puma's nitro foam. Got some really surprising results as I've tested these out on foot, but also got some durometer readings as well. It turns out that the softest foams aren't always the best, and some of the foams that I thought were incredibly soft aren't. And some of the ones I thought were quite firm are in fact really soft, so there we go. Maybe my feet aren't quite as accurate as I thought they were. I can confirm though that some of the foams Puma are using in 2023 are really fantastic. A lot of the time they're using 2 separate layers of foam now, and certainly in the Forever Run Nitro, which is due to release very soon, sort of like under embargo at the moment. We'll have a review on that at the start of March. That seems to use 2 different versions of Nitro, and they both have different sorts of densities and different softness. The Nitro Elite foam though from Puma is really one step into the future for me. It's helped me in my training to get back to fitness levels that I haven't had for about 18 months. Some recent speed sessions in these bad boys have been extremely successful. And there I was thinking it was one of the lightest foams out there. It's not at all. It's coming up as about 30 on the Shore A durometer tester. So it's certainly not the lightest. It's got a lot of cushion and rebound to it, I suppose. And I think that's what works for me. But it's super light. And I think that is perhaps part of the winning formula. That nitrogen infused pebax material just seems to work for my running form. Does also seem to be that little bit hardier than some of the other foams we're going to look at today. Just looking at all my results here as I've tested out nitro, that seems to come in at around about 28 or 29 on that Shore durometer scale. It's the Shore A scale if you're interested in that sort of thing. And bizarrely, the Nitro Elite in this shoe seems to be that little bit harder, I suppose, than the one in some of the earlier Nitro Elite shoes. So it's not all the same stuff, guys. It might have the name on there, but I do believe it to be slightly different formula. It's a little softer in the Fast R Nitro Elite. Only by like a few points, but it is there. If I had to grade the Puma foams between like E and A, I think I'd probably give the Nitro Standard foam like a B, really, a strong B. It's really good for me in training. Soft enough that it doesn't feel like a clog, but it's got a little rigidity to it. And I think that Puma have got the right idea, perhaps coupling it with some harder foams. Pro foam seems to work very well, even in some of the more expensive shoes. I'll probably give that like a B-. Not sure I'd want a wholly pro foam shoe. Probably be a little bit too responsive for me. But for that Nitro Elite formula that's featured in the Fast R Nitro Elite, then also the Deviate Nitro Elite and the Elite 2 and the Deviate Nitro, I gotta give that an A. It just really does seem to work for me. Fantastic. So looking at those Puma foams, I'm going to conclude on that. It's not just about the softness of the foam, it's about the sort of rebound. And I've always felt that with the Puma shoes. Let's move on to Saucony next to really soften things up. Now, some of the early Power Run PB shoes from Saucony always felt a little bit firm to me. I was very surprised to find just how consistent they were. Yes, they were a little bit firmer when I tested them with the durometer unit, but extremely consistent, like the Speed 1, 2, Endorphin Pro 1 and 2, all came in around about 27. But they've certainly broken the mold with the Speed 3 and the Endorphin Pro 3. Those are coming in at about 18 or 19 on that Shure durometer measurement, which are amongst the softest running shoes that I've got, and certainly it does feel like that in the Endorphin Pro 3. So they've obviously tinkered with the formula a little bit between those early versions of the Pro and the Speed. I mean, that might be great for you. You might want the softest out there, but that could be a step in the wrong direction for some of you that want a more sort of concise, consistent ride. Perhaps that's why some people view the Endorphin Pro 3 as a true marathon shoe from Saucony. I know that Kofuzi really did find that one a much better fit for the marathon distance, just due to it being a little bit more forgiving, a little bit softer. The others have always felt like 10k or half marathon shoes, so the numbers there do actually add up. My feelings kind of quantified. I think I'll probably give an A to the Power Run PB that we've got in the current shoes, probably like a B to the Endorphin Pro 1 and 2. Those just felt a little bit too firm to go to the marathon anyway. That's kind of my focus right now. Keep having dreams about Brighton. It's a bit weird. Does that happen to you when you got a race coming up? You're sort of like dreaming about the start and your hotel, where you're going to sleep and all this crazy stuff. It's really weird. It's messing with my mind. Now, I was really intrigued when I tested out a Power Run shoe, the Shift 3. Some people find that quite firm, I suppose. They tend to be using Power Run these days purely as like a frame, or for those sort of daily shoes, and then adding some sort of Power Run Plus insole in there to sort of soften things up. Just checking through my measurements here, and Power Run came up as 31 on that Shure scale. So it's hardly firm, you know, that's still pretty soft. You know, it's a roundabout React, really. So I never really thought that about it. I always felt it was quite smooth, but I suppose, yeah, React-like. Not sure I'd want a Power Run only shoe though. I think it'd be a little bit too firm for my liking. I do like those Power Run Plus insoles they're including, so I'll probably give that like a C. We're going to move on to the three-stripe brand now, Adidas. Again, with Adidas, there's a whole bunch of combinations here. The way they use the foams together, the naming of the foams, it's not all the same stuff, guys. I do have to say, Lightstrike on its own here, not really something that I particularly enjoyed. I did use that durometer tester on the Adizero SL. It came up with about 37, probably one of the firmest that I tried out. I did not enjoy running in that shoe at all. It just felt like a very constrictive piece of balsa wood on my foot. So I'm probably going to give Lightstrike on its own like a D-. But the Lightstrike in other shoes doesn't appear to be the same stuff. When I looked at the rim that they had on the Boston 9, that was coming up even higher, about 41. Though you'll be bowled over by this, Boost is actually one of the softest materials. So anybody out there that's saying Boost isn't soft, every single Boost shoe that I've tried in my whole collection's coming in at around about 20. And bear in mind, some of these shoes have been hammered into the floor, you know, like 100 miles on them easily. Some of them been used for casual use, is probably even more, like 200 or 300 miles, still coming out around about 20. There are only a couple of foams that actually were coming in softer than that. So if I had to rate Boost, I'd probably give that like a B or a B+, just a little bit heavy, I suppose. I'm not sure I want a Boost racing shoe, but for training purposes, no problem. Does make me think I should go and pick up the new Ultra Boost that's just released for this year. The Light Boost. Give it a go, why not? Completely changed my mind about it. I looked and thought, do I need another heavy Boost shoe? Well, actually, for softness and cushion, it's right up there. Now, the most interesting thing I found out by measuring all the foams was that Lightstrike Pro itself seems to have several variations. If you ever thought to yourself that the Adios Pro 1 and 2 were quite different to the 3, you would be right. It appears that Adidas have used two different formulas of Lightstrike Pro in the Adizero Pro 1 and 2. You've got like a softer top section and then a more dense, slightly firmer section underneath that in the midsole. They're definitely different. I've tested this out with non-painted sort of midsoles as well. They even chopped a pair in half as well, just to check and see if it was some sort of fluke, but it's true. So Adios Pro 1 and 2, that top section is slightly softer and the lower section a little bit firmer. That is not the case in the Adios Pro 3. The whole midsole seems to have pretty much the same softness level. Yeah, I'm not talking by much here. It's just a a small amount, but it's definitely different. Lightstrike Pro itself comes in at around about 26 or 27, and that was across the board everywhere. Even when I tested the sections in the Adidas 7 and the 6, all coming in very consistent around about that same number. Now, those shoes work really well for me, so not discounting Lightstrike, it certainly had the same firmness level that we had in the Adizero SL in that Adidas 7. So good to see that there's some correlation there. You know, it shows that the meter is working correctly, but the addition of that larger Lightstrike Pro section in the front seems to make the shoe work better, which really excites me even more about the new versions of the Adidas and also the Boston. Perhaps that might even be a goer this time. On to our last brand of the day, and that is Nike. Now, Nike are doing some interesting things, certainly with Zoom X, which makes it a little bit more difficult to accurately measure the softness level of the midsole. So with Zoom X, they seem to actually coat it in something to try and improve the durability. Where I've tested all of the different Zoom X shoes I've got in my collection, that certainly is the case. Now, when you get down to the nitty gritty of it, Zoom X does seem to be very slightly different though in its core. By far and away the softest shoe of the whole lot, and that goes across the whole line, is the Invincible Run. You're getting a measurement of about 18 or 19 Sure for that shoe. When we get to the different versions of the Vaporfly though, that's where things get a little interesting. Now, my pair of the Vaporfly Next Percent 2, that Proto edition, I got about a measurement of 20, and that was reasonably consistent across the whole of the midsole. Now, is that because that's one of the newer shoes that I've got? Some of the older pairs that I got a much harder measurement. I was getting about 32 to 34. I think that's down to the Zoom X material itself actually starting to harden up over time. There was no comparison really between those older shoes that have been sat around for a little while and that one that's actually been used reasonably recently. And that was a consistent thing as well when I tested other Zoom X shoes, like the Nike Tempo Next Percent and also the Streak Fly as well. I haven't used those in a while and they've certainly hardened up. The one shoe though that had not hardened up, which is one of the older ones, is the Vaporfly 4% Gakuso Flyknit. This thing still had some of that pop and some of that softness. It wasn't quite to the same level as something like the Invincible Run or perhaps the Vaporfly Next Percent 2, but it still has that special magic. This doesn't seem to have that same coating on the outside of the midsole material, and we'll all remember, perhaps not so fondly, how quickly that midsole material did start to deteriorate and just sort of crumble and fall to bits. There's everything about the actual foam itself is a little bit different. So I think if I had to grade React, I'd probably give it like a C+. I think other sorts of midsoles have come along that are just a little bit more forgiving these days to run in. I think I'd rather place myself in a Puma nitro shoe really than React these days. Though I did find the React in the Pegasus 39 from last year to be a touch softer than all of the others, so I was right in that. All of these things I thought I was kind of imagining, while I've actually managed to put them into numbers now with that durometer tester, and I was correct. It was a little bit softer. I did run a poll over on the community section of the channel. 44% of you suggested the original Vaporfly 4% and the Next Percent were a little softer and perhaps more compressive in the midsole. 43% of you suggested there was no difference, and 12% believed that the new ones are softer. So I think I'm kind of in all of those categories at some point, depending on the shoe we're looking at. That original Vaporfly 4% certainly a little bit softer, but the original Next Percent I've got is certainly not aged well, I suppose you could say. The most recent pair I've got of the Vaporfly Next Percent 2, still feeling really good. So I think in terms of Zoom X, I've got to give it an A really. It's certainly helping me to get to the start line of the Brighton Marathon in good shape. And I can run like a maniac in it as well, which is always useful. Now with the Alpha Fly, I'm not going to discount that one. I did get pretty consistent results across both the original version and the V2. Nothing majorly different there. A little bit firmer than the Zoom X measurements that I got from the Vaporfly Next Percent 2, but pretty consistent really, though it does seem to have an even thicker coating on the outside of the midsole. I haven't bothered to actually test any of the shoes that have got crushed up Zoom X in because I just can't bring myself to do it. All of them have been a real letdown. A real disappointment. I'm going to give him a grade anyway. I'll give it a D. There you go. Okay, so that's Puma, Saucony, Adidas and Nike covered. I will be doing the other brands in our forthcoming video, so hold tight. Hope you've enjoyed this one today, people. Musical interlude today from the fantastic John Otway. Track called Beware of the Flowers, because I'm sure they're gonna get you, yeah. I love this, it's just fuzzed up madness, really. Really interesting, very British sort of vocal delivery, very strange production, just everything about his music seems to be a little bit odd. You can't quite put your finger on it. The old durometer tester wouldn't make head nor tail of John Otway's material. It's an artist that I've completely bypassed somehow and never heard of, but I'll certainly be listening to some more of it again if you like sort of wild, interesting, alternative guitar music. Go and check it out, John Otway with Beware of the Flowers, because I'm sure they're going to get you, yeah. Thanks for tuning in, people. I hope you've enjoyed this very strange video with a man talking about midsole foam softness. But hey, you know, that's probably why you're here. That's probably what you like watching. Hit that subscribe button, click the bell below for notifications. Also, give this video a thumbs up, like, and share it with your running buddies. My name's EDDBUD, and I'll be seeing you